What? No, I'm not doing a show about the Overwatch dude being gay. I mean, good for him, but I'm not doing a show about it. Well, firstly, because I've got a lot of modern gaming to catch up on, and I'm still not 100% clear on what Overwatch even actually is, apart from like Team Fortress, but with a superhero kind of Incredibles Watchmen scenario going on, and every character looks like they're from something else, but processed through some kind of anime, pop art, Instagram filter. I mean, exactly why is this a big deal? Yes, I'm aware because video games, but still, I mean, like literally every single Overwatch thing I've ever experienced has had an overriding aesthetic and total sensibility that can best be summed up as Blade Runner as an upscale Los Feliz high school's inclusivity-minded prom theme. So it just feels weird to me that there'd be that many rabid homophobes skulking around this particular fan base. But mostly because anything related to Blizzard is still inevitably wrapped up in the fallout from the nonsense around the other Overwatch scandal with the player that may or may not exist, and that whole Diablo Immortal fallout, which is just exhausting to me. Not because my particular take on it was disagreed with by some. If it wasn't for backlash, it wouldn't be worth doing this show, honestly, but because it's just one version of an intractable argument that's been unwinnable, really unhavable, for about as long as gaming has been sentient of the expectation to care about these things, where it's a losing prospect to even attempt offering a take that isn't some variation on "This is gaming, and we are not afraid!" Basically, every unpopular decision backlash scandal in video games follows the same infuriatingly predictable formula. Step 1. A corporation will decide to do something dumb and bad, motivated solely by desire for profit because they are a corporation. Step 2. The dumb and bad decision made for profit will then be announced by a developer and/or celebrity with nerd cred and framed as an awesome, not bad thing for making happiness and not only profit. No, never. Usually it's some big dumb spectacle designed specifically for the joint purpose of increasing profits while obscuring the first part of that purpose. Step 3. Internet games culture processes this announcement.
Step 4. Having never meaningfully decoupled the concept of gamer identity from the marketing-created construct it originated as far back as the 1990s, Internet games culture predictably short-circuits in attempting to grapple with disgust at profit-driven capitalist corporatism without meaningfully grappling with their own complicity and gamer identity itself being inextricably part of that same corporatism, crumpling into a defeated psychological heap with unspent anger instead spewing haphazardly at more vulnerable, convenient targets.
Ahem. Step 5. Because the internet is an asshole magnification machine, any reasonable response one way or the other is drowned out immediately by the worst possible nastiest takes raining down not on the appropriate target, i.e. the system, the fact that gaming is a business heavily corporatized, and thus bad profit-driven decisions will happen and attaching your entire self-identity to such things will hurt you, but rather on the acceptable punching bag of the moment. Maybe one developer, one presenter, one company, some nebulous idea of an impure influence infiltrating the medium, whatever. Step 6. Games journalism reports on this. Step 7. Everyone is wrong and so is everyone else. If a games journalist says anything close to, yeah, well, that does seem like kind of a shitty thing to have announced, they are immediately accused of having signed on to support all the worst people and opinions in gaming. Yes, even those guys and that thing. Whereas the journalist who alternately offers that perhaps the previously identified acceptable punching bag of the moment does not deserve summary execution via Wicker Man in the parking lot of the next PAX will be met with the immediate scoffing of, hey, why are you defending millionaires and corporations from consumer criticism like they're the ones being picked on, Mr. Scarlet Pimpernel? Step 8. And now it just descends into a cluster of verbal sideways punching as we fight and argue and name call and hem and haw about how well, point taken, but on the other hand, rich people always bad, consumer always good is a pretty immature praxis, and does not the consumer rights framing only serve to further the machinery of consumption and exploitation while only looking like a populist stand? But never mind, because we've all got to settle up, all creators versus consumers versus journalists versus other journalists, and whose side are you on, and which side will Spider-Man be on, and oh hey, didn't didn't anyone notice the bad guys getting away? You know, because they did, and they pretty much always do. Both the top-tier corporate scumbags and the shitty games industry system that sustains them figured out a long time ago how to ensure that not only does the backlash to poorly received ideas and or outright bad actions never reach back any further than whatever sacrificial lamb got shoved out in front with them by constantly reinforcing this played-out Randian culty BS where it's always individual devs, creators, presenters, celebrities, journos, whatever, who need pulling down, and not this whole stupid incarnation of games culture itself. But thanks to the corporate cultivated gamer identity stranglehold on our psyche, we end up factionalizing and having this fight among ourselves, which also ends up muddying and obscuring real substantive areas of debate and disagreement within fandom about important stuff we should be having instead, rather than directing our displeasure at or trying to affect change in the area it's really needed, i.e. the system. And that's not to say we shouldn't have passionate reactions and arguments about things that happen or are planned to happen in gaming. Theoretically, developers, publishers, players, creators are all in this because we're passionate about games, but when we get sucked into these cycles and this specific stupid feedback loop again and again and again, I mean, it's still about a game, but we're the ones getting played. Just a thought. 15 years later, they're doing a sequel to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Yes, a game from all the way back in 2004. I mean, they're rolling everything else back to the Bush administration, so why not also the rough around the edges but fondly remembered video game spin-off of the role-playing game franchise you learned just enough of to try and fail at impressing the hot goth chick at Newbury Comics. Or maybe that was just me. Anyway, it's back and people are mad for a stupid reason. Yeah, I know, look, it's a relatively niche industry, okay? Something worth talking about doesn't actually happen every week, and I'll be damned if I was gonna try and drag a whole show out of whichever royal this is, saying he wants to ban Fortnite in the UK. Wait, is this the one that's gonna be king, or the one that married the actress from Suits? Well, okay, so which one gets Excalibur? Well, then what's all this bullshit on the news about? But alright, what's got the usual suspects ticked off in particular is that this particular sequel is going to feature an overhauled character creation engine that'll let players not only decide on the physical attributes of their character before they're transformed into a vampire at the beginning of the game, but also their body type, gender identity, voice, pronouns, etc., all in the name of greater inclusivity and acknowledgement of a diverse 21st century gaming audience. Which of course is evidence that the wrong people are calling the shots in the developer's office, and this whole thing is just going to be a disaster. God, I don't even remember what it was like to not be tired.
I am so tired.
But what bugs me is I feel like it wasn't that long ago that this kind of thing, the ability to have lots of options for what to do with a character, was something gamers would brag about, a thing we'd point to in the medium and use as a talking point to say, see, options, ways to explore identity, that's a positive, forward-thinking aspect to this hobby you keep stereotyping as just being mindless violence. Remember, people used to raise this point for the later Saints Row games all the time. Saints Row 4, incidentally, is still my favorite game of that whole console generation. You know, yeah, sure, these games are violent and scatological with bad taste humor and dildo bats and naughty language, but you can put your character in any clothes you want regardless of gender, be any race or body type you want, use a masculine coded voice in a female looking body or vice versa, initiate a romance sequence with supporting characters of either gender. How progressive! Now obviously there's an issue of intent present in both cases that makes them different. The varied options in Bloodlines 2 are stated to be there for purposes of inclusivity and diversity, so people who get mad at that kind of thing because it signals a broader political bent they don't like are mad about it, whereas the Saints Row franchise ended up in a quasi-progressive place in part by, well, joking around about it. It let you break gender and race coding with costuming as part of an overall irreverent tone, and then Saints Row 4 played up the sleep with anyone in the crew aspect as a mini-game to riff on the then new romance options in games like Mass Effect, plus it added to the general sense of morally subversive, unbound from the rules attitude that informed the main characters. But the point is, gamers were happy to claim open-mindedness and inclusivity as a net positive when it was seen as a way to defend gaming from perceived criticism, but now that the wrong kind of games boosters are touting it as an intended feature. It's the games themselves that we think we need defending from. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, folks. After all this time, why do we want to stay locked into this old, played-out paradigm where the only positive position so many of us know how to take is a defensive one? It's a weird relationship to have with media you claim to love or even just appreciate on a serious level, that if you're straining for a gotcha to prove something's worth, it's a positive, but if the people making it say up front it's in there and we put it in on purpose, it becomes, whoa, hey, let's not politicize the fun. If Bloodlines 2 is different, it's because 2004 was a long time ago and a lot of things have changed. And one of those things is that video games are a massively influential medium that doesn't need its consumers defending it from anybody anymore. We can engage in more thoughtful ways, and not just when we're trying to prove something that's already of value in evidence. Just a thought.